she texted. He still has no idea about my other family. My poor, gullible boyfriend. I read the accidental message as I was making her favorite breakfast on a Sunday morning. My heart dropped. I assumed she meant her estranged parents. Then I looked at the recipient. It was her ex-husband. Don't miss the twist. Subscribe and be part of the journey. I, Liam, 36, male, had been with Chloe, 34, for 4 years. Our life was a quiet, modest one in a small rented house in Omaha, Nebraska. I was a freelance storm-chasing photographer, a job of long, lonely drives and moments of terrifying beauty. My income was unpredictable, averaging around $80,000 a year. Chloe was a pediatric nurse, a job that seemed a perfect fit for her gentle, caring nature. Her stable $75,000 salary was the bedrock of our finances. Our social life was small. Chloe often worked weekends, and my own work was seasonal and weather-dependent. She often spoke of her ex-husband, Mark, and their amicable divorce. She also spoke of her estranged family, a painful backstory that explained her frequent, solitary weekend trips to visit old friends and reconnect with her past. I saw these trips as acts of quiet courage. I had no idea they were acts of profound deception. The text message was a seismic event that fractured the very foundation of my reality. The estranged family was not her parents. It was her ex-husband and their 2 young children, a family she had never left, but merely put on pause 3 days a week. My home was not her home, it was a convenient weekday apartment. My love was not her future, it was a subsidy for her double life. Update 1, the week before the text, a life-altering opportunity had arrived. A prestigious atmospheric research institute in Boulder, Colorado, had offered me a full-time position. I would lead a new team using photography and drone imaging to analyze severe weather patterns. The salary was $150,000 a year, a stable, significant income, doing the work I loved. I had presented the offer to Chloe, my heart pounding with excitement. Boulder, Colorado, she had asked, her face a mask of concern. That's so far away from my support system. We could build a new one, I had urged. This is a real future for us. My patients need me, she had replied, her voice soft and full of a practiced sincerity. And I need to be close to my past, Liam, to heal. You can't ask me to leave that behind. And now, holding her phone, her words echoed with a chilling, new meaning. Her support system was her other family. The next day, I quietly sent my signed acceptance to the institute in Boulder. While Chloe went to her nursing job, a portrait of selfless care, I was online, methodically pulling public records. A marriage license that was never dissolved. Birth certificates for 2 children, listing her and Mark as parents. The quiet, digital proof of a 4-year lie. I opened a new bank account and began building a wall around my finances. Update 2, there was no angry confrontation. Her betrayal was too vast, too cold for heat. I waited until the following weekend, when she was packing for another trip to visit her family. I've accepted the job in Boulder, I said, my voice calm and even. I'm moving in 2 weeks. Her performance of shocked disappointment was flawless. Liam, we talked about this, she said, her eyes welling with tears. I can't go. I'm not asking you to, I replied. I'm going alone. Her expression shifted from feigned hurt to cold, hard anger. She had miscalculated. She had assumed her emotional leverage was absolute. You're choosing a job over our relationship, she asked. There is no relationship, Chloe, I said, my voice quiet. There's just my life, and then there's your other one. I let the words hang in the air. The flicker of pure panic in her eyes was the only confession I needed. If you leave, she said, her voice a low threat, we are done. We were never really together. I answered. I was just the last one to know. Update 3, her response was a campaign of calculated pity among our few mutual friends. She told them I was having a breakdown, that the stress of my work had made me paranoid and cruel. She was the victim, the loving girlfriend abandoned by a man who had lost his mind. I moved out while she was on her next weekend trip to her real home. I packed my camera gear, my clothes, and the few pieces of furniture that were mine. I left the house that had been my home and her hotel, and I drove west toward the mountains. My new life in Boulder was a breath of clean, cold air. I rented a modern apartment with a balcony that looked out at the Flatirons. The work at the Institute was even more rewarding than I had imagined. I was surrounded by brilliant, dedicated scientists, and my practical, field-tested knowledge was valued and respected. I was no longer a lone chaser of storms, I was a part of a team dedicated to understanding them. Update 4. My work in Boulder flourished. I was a natural leader, and my team's innovative use of drone technology was yielding groundbreaking data. The quiet, focused work was a form of therapy, a way to rebuild my life on a foundation of tangible, verifiable truth. Back in Omaha, Chloe's double life continued, now unburdened by my presence. I heard through a former neighbor that Mark, her husband, had moved back into her old rental house. To the world, it looked like a simple breakup. After my first 6 months at the Institute, my team and I published our first major paper. The Institute awarded me a $15,000 bonus for my leadership. I used it to hire a private investigator, a quiet, methodical woman in Omaha. I didn't need proof of the affair. I needed a clear, documented picture of her current life for the final phase of my plan. Update 5. The university that partnered with my institute published its annual research magazine. My team's work was the cover story. The article, complete with my name and a professional photograph, was a testament to the new, successful life I had built. The magazine, with its national distribution, inevitably found its way to Chloe. The emails started a few days later, sent to my new work address. She was proud of me. She had always known I was destined for great things. She claimed she had left Mark for good, that she had made a terrible mistake, and that she was ready to move to Boulder and be the partner I deserved. My mother, who had been heartbroken and confused, called me after a friend sent her the article. I finally told her the whole story, every sordid detail. The quiet, steely anger in her voice was a powerful, healing balm. Update 6. She appeared at my apartment in Boulder. She had created a narrative in her mind where I was the lonely, pining victim, and she was the returning hero. She looked out of place against the stark, honest beauty of the mountains. "Liam," she said, her voice a soft, practiced melody, "I'm here. I'm ready to start over." I did not invite her in. I stood in the doorway, a quiet, unmovable object. "There is no starting over, Chloe. I've changed," she insisted. "I left him. I chose you. You don't get to choose anymore," I said, my voice calm and even. "I have the final report from my investigator. I know you're still living with him. I know you're still working at the same hospital. I have photos of you with your children at their school picnic last week." I held up my phone and showed her the picture. Her, Mark, and 2 smiling children. A perfect family portrait. "You didn't come here to start over," I said. "You just came here to start a new lie." Update 7. Her response was a desperate, vicious attempt to destroy my new life. She created an anonymous social media profile and began sending messages to my colleagues and to the university's administration. She accused me of being a stalker, of being mentally unstable, of harassing her and her children from a previous relationship. It was a clumsy, desperate attack. My institute's human resources department called me in for a meeting. I didn't make a defense. I simply presented my own evidence. I showed them the original text message. I showed them the public records. I showed them the report from my private investigator. And then I showed them the file I had been quietly building for months. My revenge was not a public shaming. It was a quiet, professional, and devastating act of truth-telling. I had compiled a detailed dossier, complete with sworn affidavits and bank records, documenting how she had used my income to support her double life. I sent this dossier, along with a quiet, formal letter expressing my grave concern, to the ethics board of the hospital where she worked and to the Nebraska State Board of Nursing. The issue was no longer a personal dispute, it was a matter of professional integrity for a pediatric nurse. Update 8. A year later, the consequences of her choices had fully manifested. The State Nursing Board, after a lengthy investigation into conduct unbecoming a professional, had suspended her license. The hospital had terminated her employment. Her perfect, compartmentalized life had collapsed. My life, in contrast, was a study in quiet, steady progress. I was now the head of my department at the institute. I was dating a woman named Anya, a brilliant climatologist I had met at work. Our relationship was built on a foundation of shared passions and radical honesty. We were building a home together, a real one. I received one last, rambling email from Chloe. She and Mark were selling their house. They were buried in legal fees and debt. The email was a bitter, self-pitying tirade. It ended with the words, "You ruined my life." I deleted it without a reply. Final update: a few months ago, I was a speaker at a meteorological conference. After my presentation, I was approached by a man who introduced himself as a lawyer. He had been on the state nursing board that had reviewed Chloe's case. "I wanted to tell you," he said, shaking my hand, "your file was the most meticulous, well-documented case of its kind I have ever seen. You didn't present it with anger. You presented it with a quiet, irrefutable sense of fact." He shook his head. "She was a danger to a profession that is built, more than anything else, on trust." His words were a final, validating echo of the lesson I had learned. A life, like a scientific theory, must be built on a foundation of verifiable truth. You can create a beautiful, compelling story, but if it is not supported by evidence, it is nothing more than a fiction. And fictions, when exposed to the harsh, unforgiving light of reality, will always, eventually, fall apart.